Okay.
All right, so today we're talking with James Norris and Hambright-Belue of the Beck Group about technology and integrated project delivery. So first, do you mind each telling us just a little bit about what your position is at Beck so that the students know?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm James Norris with Beck, and I'm the director of virtual building for the firm, both for the design and construction side. So I've got a great, amazing group of people that I work with that handle everything from Revit implementations to developing Dynamo scripts to we have a 3D coordination department. We have a scheduling department that integrates scheduling for design and construction. And we have an operational technology department, all the tools that we use that allow us to do our jobs well. And being that we're an integrated firm, meaning design build, we have to be very cognizant of the tools that we use and how they're used. So that's it.
So I'm Hambright-Belue. I'm an architect here and a Clemson grad a few years ago. Go Tigers. And I'm one of the people who kind of works closely with a lot of what James does. I'm on the track actually to be an integrated project leader for our company. So currently I follow projects from early concept design all the way through completion of construction. James and I work very closely to figure out what best suits the project's needs as well as my needs in terms of technology.
Yeah, and Eric's an all-star. He knows all these tools. His experience in the past, it's been great for us to leverage. So
Great. So you sort of touched on this, but what technologies do you use at Beck, and how do they support the IPD projects?
So we use quite a few tools. So to start off, before I list out the tools, in our industry, there's like many tools for different stages of a project. So what the things I'm going to list out, what we think about is when we use a tool or a software, we think about, does it match the process? So we don't pick a tool first. And does it integrate with the other systems that we use so that we're not worn down using 50 different things that don't talk to each other? So we normally start off in conceptual design. If we're going to storyboard this, right? In conceptual design, it's a mixture of Revit, SketchUp, and simultaneously our pre-construction department, who does estimating, will seamlessly do things within Destiny Profiler, which is an in-house tool that we've developed. So we have a technology firm called Beck Technology that's developed Destiny Profiler, Destiny Estimator, and Destiny Optioneering. Optioneering, basically, you set parameters as a designer or as an owner's representative and say, I want these 30 things, and then it'll spend a day coming up with thousands of iterations and ideally coming down to like 4 or 5 based on, where it's being located, sun path, energy analysis. So we use some conceptual programming tools to help identify best location for the building, and then from there, design the building conceptually, then move into Revit. And while we're in Revit, we're using Autodesk software called 360-Glue that allows us to run coordination against our projects themselves. And from 360-Glue, we're using collaboration for Revit, which we'll talk a little bit later, hopefully about, which allows us to collaborate in real time. And the model lives in the cloud rather than on your desktop or on the server, which was a major issue within our industry for a long time. And then we move into using estimating software like Timberline or Destiny Estimator to understand in a 3D way. We consume the Revit model and then identify and track changes every time the model is changed to look at what has changed and give that back to the design team to say, hey, look, here's where you're at. Maybe before we draw any farther and before we burn more hours in design, we don't want to just draw and reduce the profit on the design side. We want to say, does this match up, like they call it target value design, with the needs of the program and the cost of what it's going to cost to build? We don't want to get to the end of construction documents and then find out that's too much. And now we've got to value engineer things away, removing things from the design that actually made the design beautiful, made it worthwhile. And you want to do all that early. And then once we get into construction, we're using 360 glue again to walk the job site with our iPads. We're completely mobile. We use Procore for our project management system, and it automatically will keep an updated set of drawings. It's very important. A lot of times it's one person's full-time job. So we look for tools that remove that as being a thing. So in architecture, you should just be great at drawing, and in construction, you should be great at building. And we're trying to choose tools that allow us to do that rather than buying the newest, hottest thing that requires so much effort that you don't get to do the job that you signed up for. Mm-hmm. So, and then kind of simultaneously with those softwares, we have in-house data analytics. We use a lot of big data to understand how project health is, whether it's on the Revit side, the quality of the model, or in construction, the quality of our schedules. And from a contract side, have we signed enough contracts? If we have $100 million job and we're supposed to what they call buy out the project. So on the construction side, it's very important. Once the design is transferred over, or even if it's kind of overlapped, we have to spend a certain amount of money just to make sure we're going to meet the end date. So we're tracking that and kind of creating what they call the CLEMI curve, right? And tracking that on all of our jobs. So.
Okay. I do have a quick follow-up about the cloud because that's come up a little bit with our students. Is that a challenge working in places where, one, there's a difference between rural versus, I guess like a densely populated area? And then is it also cumbersome in terms of, I guess, the size of these files and things? Because that's definitely been something that students have had a lot of concern about.
It can be. The cloud is getting better and better every day. The key is less of having everything at your fingertips and kind of the key is more of knowing what exactly you need to be looking for. So if you go out to a project site and you're looking at something very specific, there's 4G iPads and things like that where you can access your information. But if you're a little more strategic about what you're looking for, you don't necessarily have to hold the entire model. So I would kind of put that more on the person.
Yeah, I think that you think of the cloud now as everybody has spent so much money on laptops or a desktop computer to render things out, right? As on the architecture side, you need a heavy graphics card, and that's going away. So we're using the cloud, right? And we're using data farms to render things out at a pace way faster than we could on our own laptops. So the cloud is catching up now, like, Eric was saying with the AEC industry, and, we use it. Our Revit files are now living centrally there, and everybody's always seeing the latest updates, and the computing power is happening there rather than on your machine. Which is critical for us because software changes. Sometimes IT doesn't get the latest update on your computer. You can't open something up. You want it to live in a place in a unified ecosystem that you have to worry about those things. So,
just as a follow-up, are you worried about security?
No, I think we're more worried about security internally from like an accounting standpoint, like making sure fraud and things like are not happening, that we're not signing up a consultant or a subcontractor that's a fake business. But security of stealing data is such a weird thing. We're working on the Smithsonian right now, or I can say that, I guess, but there's always these concerns in contracts about security. But no, I think not from a standpoint of stealing like content. It's like, what are they going to do with it? I think a bigger concern for us is getting hacked and somebody like stealing my identity through my laptop. Right. So that absolutely, like now, people, if your Bluetooth is on your phone and you walk past them, they can steal your information. You don't even need Wi-Fi now. So But regarding sharing data, no.
So, I mean, and to that point, we usually don't keep financials, and particularly like in the case of the project James just mentioned, we don't keep that kind of information on the cloud. And even if they were to access our Revit files and things like that, they would need Revit to, one, open the file, and then they'd have to be savvy enough to understand even what they were looking at. So it's generally not an issue when it comes to model data.
Okay.
So, and normally the only time we're limited by cloud usage are a lot of times federal jobs that are very high security, where we have to leave everything within our computer or submit it to their FTP site. But beyond that, we don't want to be down that route. We always want to be in the cloud.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you think IPD has changed technology, or has technology changed IPD? Or I guess the way we work?
I mean, I would go back to what James was talking about originally, kind of rattling off all the technologies. It's important that technology and your process are in dialogue rather than letting one inform the other. And I'll say one example is Procore, which is kind of our sort of construction side CA software, project management software, sort of all in one package. We as BEC have a good relationship with the developers, and we, along with a few other companies, kind of push them on what we would like to see happen, and they kind of, not guinea pig us, but they try different things with us, and they like to get our feedback on that. So I think that, kind of like the whole world and even the whole concept of integrated project delivery, everything's sort of being more conversational, and they're a little more flexible to fit your process. And at the same time, you don't want your process to be so rigorous that you can't find anything for it.
Yeah, I'd say the important thing of IPD is it's forced softwares to integrate more, because the speed of, there's this problem right now, and hopefully this goes away one day. We're trying to build so fast, and maybe like a human person can only build so quickly or draw so fast, unless robots take over the world. And because of that, we now have to have softwares that actually communicate with each other seamlessly. So if IPD has changed anything, it's because it's becoming more broad and democratized as a way of delivering buildings. But Autodesk now has a platform, right? This Forge platform, they're calling it, and they're allowing startups to write things to that can talk to Revit, that can talk to all sorts of different softwares. So the answer is yes. I think that if IPD's changed anything, it's forcing software to be more collaborative and integrate with each other.
So. Okay. How has technology improved collaboration on IPD projects? And I think some of this obviously you've already touched on. But I guess in what ways does it allow you to collaborate with people you work with?
Go for it. You're using SQL right now. So
the biggest thing is just like a meeting, it brings everyone to the table. And generally, like we said, with kind of these big kind of bottom up softwares, everyone can kind of understand what they're looking at, and everyone can kind of gain access to the information that's needed. It's less of a design is handing things backwards to estimation, is then handing things backwards to construction, and then design's still moving, and they're kind of chasing, and it's become more cyclical. That's kind of the best way I can describe that.
I'd say, so back in the 90s and the early 2000s, imagine that collaboration was, jobs were moving fast, and we were basically optimizing a standards like a watch with gears. But now that we have the cloud, imagine it's kind of like we've rethought it, and it's some great programmers did, and now we're using a digital watch, right? There's no worry about that. We're not trying to optimize each little thing so we can all talk to each other. It just works. And the innards are different. And that's the inflection point that we hit, is we are in the digital watch era and not trying to fix the gears of something. And it's a new area that we're all getting used to, but it is allowing collaboration in real time, where before you'd have an extra 20 people that worked for a company that all were somebody was really good at setting up an FTP site. You have to have a webmaster at something else, and that's gone away, which is beneficial for our industry.
So, just as a follow-up, so would you say that technology, for example, the cloud is now the co-location for the team?
Yeah, I mean, it is in a lot of ways. I mean, this, funny enough, I just talked with a startup yesterday called Iris Stick. They're kind of moving paddling. So they're like a Google Glass, but instead of, from a collaborative standpoint, let's say we're walking a building and half of the team can't be there because flights are expensive. You can just put on a set of glasses and it's linked to your FaceTime account, and whatever you see, I see, right? Because maybe you're an expert in one portion of looking at a renovation project, but there's other experts that all can collaborate and look at and experience what you're experiencing. So the answer is yes.
And then a follow up to that. So when we speak to a lot of professionals and a lot of the texts concerning IPD, they all say that IPD is appropriate for large scale projects, but maybe not small scale projects. And a lot of the reasoning for that is because of co-location, and it's so expensive to do that. So I wonder, with the technologies that are becoming available, do you think that may help it be?
I do. I think it's also, well, I won't talk about this maybe yet, but culture is a big issue. IPD is like, you can co-locate and it will break down. So what we found out in our firm is, we merged with urban architecture back in 1999. And it's taken us, 15 years. Really, there was a period of time when IPD projects for us were way less profitable than the standard, let's do third-party architecture and third-party construction. Because we were fighting ourselves and fighting a culture, whether it was like how students are, how they learn out of school how to be architects or construction, and it's just innately you're fighting against each other, and it's taken us a long time. So now co-location is great, but it was like this buzzword of that's going to solve our problem, but no, it won't. Not if you don't believe in the workflow, right? And if your leadership doesn't, they're just doing it to get a job, a new and sexy project, and they're saying, oh yeah, we'll be IPD. No, you won't. Your culture has to completely align first, even more so than technology, for it to work well. So, and co-location doesn't have to be a part of that. Right? It's beneficial because you want them on site because the architect, they know. But yes, I think the cloud, a lot of that can, on smaller jobs, absolutely can go away. And we've done it very well on small jobs. So,
what do you consider to be a small job? Just so we have a.
I mean, 2 million plus, 2 to 15 million. Anything above that, you really want somebody on site.
Yeah.
2 to 15, they can drive to the project. Normally, we try to work locally relative to, especially IPD type jobs where our offices are. Not all the time though. But 2 to 15 million and above that, you want someone on site.
Right. Yeah, and I mean that's kind of the interesting thing that we're going through from a culture standpoint is we talk about the role of the integrated project leader, but sort of early on below the sort of leader of the entire team, there's not really an integrated project engineer or integrated architect. And that's sort of I think a new concept that we're wrestling with, that an architect could actually fill the role of like a project engineer on the construction side or help kind of supplement that. Because I think that the big push against, the cost of co-location is just the cost of people. What could be accomplished with one person, now we have to introduce the second person because of, co-location, and we're trying to be integrated. But if the person is able to perform kind of multiple functions, then they can sort of solve that, I'll say, labor issue, labor cost issue. Yeah.
So that sort of brings us to our next question, which is, in what ways has technology improved design management and construction management?
Just leaps and bounds. Even in the short 6 years I've been in the industry, going from sort of the old school AutoCAD drawing to BIM and sort of the early stages of that. And I won't say the fumbles of BIM early on, but the sort of issues that the industry had. One, in just adjusting to it, and two, in the software and technology hadn't quite caught up to the needs, I guess, of even third-party architecture, but especially of integrated firms.
Yeah, I'd say now, first it was 2D, then it was 3D, and now it's 3D plus passive QA/QC. So as I draw, there are now plugins that can tell you, hey, that's an issue in real time, clashing. Rather than having a meeting while I'm drawing, I can know, or you can know, or she can know, or he can know what is going on with what they're drawing. And I think that has made a giant beneficial change for the industry. And then again, we're no longer using. When I was starting, I was using a fax machine for everything. Still, it's like I don't even know what that means now. What is this giant unnecessary machine? It's like everything's paperless, right? No more printing paper. How much time did you spend printing out a set of drawings? Oh, I can just export this to a magical PDF, which is not. That's so 10 years ago. But those changes have helped us with building buildings and designing buildings that we're passionate about. There was this major issue for 20 years, I feel like, where we had all these technology tools, but that's all we did. You had to be a technologist first, like a designer second, if you really wanted to be successful, and it's just painful. Yeah, and we're getting over that pain, which is really good.
Yeah, and I think I've made this comment to you before, Sally. The most important thing is that person has inherent skills, the willingness to collaborate, the good attitude, good design skills, an eye for construction and detail, and less so knows how to use Revit, or knows how to use the software. I mean, those are things that can be taught.
So just as a follow-up, so could we summarize to say that technology has improved productivity both in the design stage and the construction stage, so that the length of time we spend in pre-construction has shortened and the length of time we spend in construction has shortened? That's
correct. I think regarding productivity, I don't know how many people have seen the McKinsey studies, right, that have come out around how our industry is way behind in productivity relative to everybody else. Yeah, it's been an image that's been passed around the last year or two. I think regarding productivity for us, it's time, but it's also quality of work. There was a period of time where we would move fast but have terrible quality. And we can still move fast now, but I think the benefit is the quality of what we deliver is a lot better now. We're not making changes. We're not wasting labor hours in the field repouring a footing because it wasn't drawn right. That is what's going away. So maybe the speed is the same even, but the quality of what gets put in place and the efficiency of doing so has gotten way better. And that's really the goal. And then after that will be robots.
And I would add to that it's less important that the duration of, say, like pre-con, concept design, and all that has shrunk or is moving faster, and it's more that they're actually overlapping. I would say it's less chasing in the process, and it's more sort of a feedback loop. I mean, pre-construction, just from the way we handle things, is involved sometimes when we're pursuing projects. They're doing feasibility studies for the owner all the way to pricing out change orders of construction. So we're overlapping, and they're able to access our information in real time. We're able to give them information in real time rather than, okay, here's my 50% CDs. It's going to take you 4 weeks to price this, and by then we've moved 4 weeks ahead in the design, and everything you're going to tell me is now old information. So it's overlap, I think, in the process rather than speed and duration. Sure.
So that overlap has started, so you're saying, at an earlier phase than previously. How early? How much overlap?
Like conceptual design. Yeah. It's really strange. Like I'm acting on the owner. There's another higher ed. I'm acting as like an owner's rep, and this is a design build team, but they're third party architecture and third party construction, and we're getting involved like during conceptual. And they're like, "What? Get out of my business! Like I'm not ready for you yet." And it's like, if you want to do integration right, you have to start early, right? Or else you're too late. Like the ship has left, man, and like the cruise ship will not let you on. Like the islands will not. You can't have to like Haiti and get on the boat. It's not gonna work. It's too late. And so you've got to start early. And that's what we've learned. If you want to, I mean, honestly, right? It's about great design, but you have to be profitable. We cannot be profitable if we do not start in conceptual design and set the standards of what's expected.
So how do you get the specialty contractors and designers to buy in at a conceptual stage?
It can be tough. It really comes down to how they. The problem with our industry is that on the design side, it's really both. We have these contracts that everybody uses, and it totally hurts integrated project delivery. It doesn't matter what tools, even our culture. A good example is we were just talking about this, is the B101. It's a design AIA document that defines construction documents. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't define construction documents. What happened when that came out is all of a sudden, as an architect, everybody's like, oh, I guess it doesn't do define, so I can just deliver the minimal amount possible and have a better fee. So I'm the one with competitive advantage, and I'm going to win the work. And then another large architecture firm sees that, and they say, I'm going to do the same thing because I'm not winning work. We're all going to just deliver the least amount possible because this contract doesn't define what's needed. That's a major issue. Because then it gets handed off to construction, and then they're like, well, here's like these 50 change orders. Sorry, now the project isn't what you wanted. Either it gets delayed from a capital investment standpoint, or you get, way less than what you signed up for. And nobody can be held accountable for that. That still is going to exist now. I mean, a benefit of, and I'm hoping this happens more, a benefit of integration is that we can worry less about profitability on one side because it all goes down to one bucket. So for IPD projects for the third party, I would hope that the contract allows for more profit sharing on both sides, so that the quality of the meaning of what needs to be designed and built gets built, rather than everybody protecting their fee. They should still make money, and it should be great, but it shouldn't hurt the job. The contract should not hurt the software that we use, but it is still, unfortunately.
I mean, just to piggyback on that, to bring it back to technology, I mean, so much of what James and his group does for us, I mean, not just me as design, but us as kind of the rest of Beck, is make sure that software is not a pain point for teams. And I mean, it has been hour-long drives to go to a site to teach someone how to use their iPad, I mean, just because there's sort of a generation, and I would call it almost a knowledge gap, between people of the younger generation who are sort of used to this sort of technology and the sort of rapid change that happens with it, and some of the older folks who are maybe not as kind of warmed up to it, not as open to it. But again, that kind of goes to a culture issue. If you have a culture of technology sort of built into your integrated process, it makes life astronomically easier.
So you talked a little bit about how contracts have impacted the use of technology. Have you seen technology impact contracts?
Well, I'd tell you that, again, that comes down to if the clauses contract clauses matter a lot. So everybody listening on this call, please read whatever job you're going on to, read the contract that you're signing up for, because it matters more than it. You would think so, but it's not there yet. So what's happened is we've become integrated. Our tools, like an IPD job, right? You've got architecture and construction working in tandem. they're working using all these great tools, and say, oh, these tools are so great, and I'm building a great building. But then, boom, contract hits, and if it can instantly help, we can instantly cause a litigious relationship and keep people from wanting to use the tools they're supposed to use. So the answer, at least from my opinion, what I've experienced, is no, that contract language has to change for the AEC industry to move forward with productivity and the quality of work we have. Right now, they are way back, like that B101 for AIA. That's so a decade ago, and it's killing us. It's killing the ability to use the tools and the workflows needed to build and design and build a building well.
I agree, but I also disagree. I mean, so much of what we see now with sort of technology savvy clients is they are wanting a BIM or like a 3D deliverable. I mean, GSFIC, who does a lot of the sort of state projects, requires you to submit a coordinated as-built record BIM model. So that, in a way, they recognize that by forcing that onto you through their contract, that in little ways they kind of have to help you with that. So there's kind of BIM fees and things like that we can build in. So it's
that's what we're doing right now. Is on the owner's rep side, is we're influencing change, right? Because it is part of the contract that they do 5D.
Yeah,
right. But it does matter that whatever they sign up for, like we can force them or we can influence them to do this, but the contracts they're separately signing up for with the owner's representative have to allow that to happen. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, you're right. I think go ahead. Yes, sir. I'm done. Next one. Yeah.
You sort of mentioned on this a minute ago, Eric, but how do you deal with the differences in technical abilities? I know that is a major concern of students because some of them have the skills, some of them don't, and they're really worried if they don't have the skills that they will be left behind, even if they have a willingness to learn it.
It is a challenge. With the speed at which technology changes, and then as James kind of alluded to, the lag that the AEC industry has, even behind that. I mean, there's all kinds of technologies, but it just takes time for a company to adopt it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think for people, let's say a student who doesn't have any work experience yet, but if they know Revit really, really well, not a concern. But let's say they have work experience, but they only worked in CAD at their last firm. You can catch up. What I would say is I put that onus on the person, right? If you want to work for the best design firms, you have to be a self-learner. You can't let people hold you back and say, well, they never taught me. You can learn. Enter in a competition that requires a 3D deliverable as a student. Get involved in a way where you can learn that. Because neither one of us, right? There were times we've had to help move our firm forward. Mm-hmm. You have to be a self-starter. Because no one, even when you come to a firm and you think you're a technical expert, if people have been using Revit for 10 years, you're not. Yeah. But they will bring you up to speed as long as you are willing to put in the effort.
Mm-hmm. So what do you do about the people that are already in the industry? And Eric, you were talking about sort of the older generation. What do you do about those people to make sure that they're still adding to a project?
I mean, just for us, we offer basically 100% free training, and we James and his group will do not as need training, but just in time training. That's what we call it. And it's, say you're coming through your DD deadline, and you know that you're going to have to start working with detailing, getting some of that stuff worked out. Maybe you're not as familiar with it. That's sort of where I would say the big support role from James's group, Virtual Building, as well as our IT department. And then we have our own kind of separate BIM group. That's where they come in, and they're willing to train. But as James said, you have to kind of be willing to maybe break from what you're used to.
All right, but there is a generation. So to your answer to your question regarding the gap, there absolutely is a gap. So I could be an all-star Revit user and an architect, and my project manager may not know anything about Revit. That's an issue. That does exist. That exists because of the recession. People got out of the industry, and just because there was never this. There, by the time they became a PM, they no longer needed to know how to use the tool well, right? So then the problem becomes mentorship. How do you mentor people you're bringing up to use a tool well, and they need to, but you can't tell them as their boss what to do because you don't know. So that's where we're diving into, especially now this year, is we're hiring quite a few more people on the BIM side who are from architecture, who are like all-stars to help with that gap. So we're going to be bringing in, like, let the PM be great at negotiating the contracts and talking through and using their experience for like waterproofing issues, details they would see. And we're going to kind of bridge the gap because it exists, and mentor these people to do things the right way, helping them with hard design issues.
Great. Do y'all see technology becoming a tool that laborers use? Because that's come up as well. Students saying, the people that are in the offices, they're obviously using the technologies, but what about the people on the ground? How's their life changing with all of this?
Totally. So with Procore, again, we're fully mobile. They can see the plans in real time, or using 360 Glue from Autodesk, the model in real time, walking around and looking at things. Now we're kind of diving right into augmented reality, where they can look at the built environment before it's built and just understand imagine we coordinate a building. So you're a designer and you sat down, and we know where all the mechanical, plumbing, electrical systems are. But then as the person installing it, even though it's all been created and it's all prefabricated and the right cuts are coming in, you still need to look up and be like, oh, mechanical ductwork goes first, right, then my sanitary line will go next. You want to be able to visually see that. So it helps them a lot, and we're experiencing that a ton right now.
Would bring up the arena project, and we had a really complicated rebar situation. I mean, we had essentially 4 massive beams just littered with rebar coming together at one point,
and post-tension cable.
And we actually built the rebar in Revit to make sure everything wouldn't clash, but then we put the installer, or at least the superintendent, into VR, and he was actually able to move pieces around and understand his sequence, to get his hand in there, to be able to make the ties, to be able to make the connections and things like that. So, I mean, it's one thing to draw it on paper, and it's another thing that we've kind of we're just getting into this. Using VR to actually have it be real.
And they're the ones helping define the design. So not just because you even have people that do fabrication drawings, shop drawings, steel subcontractor, or rebar contractor, for instance. But again, like Eric mentions, it's the person in the field doing it. So we're helping them. They're telling us what the design needs to be. Even though it looks great on paper, it may still not work. So that's where the labor side is getting involved. And that's where we're also seeing the efficiencies happening. We're going away from software now and trying to get more into, really, this year and next year, we're going to be focused a lot more on actual production in the field, like how you use your body to install a thing, or VR, AR, because that's where the production portion will really go up. Software was the first focus. The next revolution is people installing.
So how far down the chain, line of supervisory line do you go with the technology? Do you go all the way down to the foreman, or do you stop at the superintendent? Do you go to
it goes down to as far as it needs to. So, like on a mobile side, we can have an unlimited amount of people on the mobile application to view whatever. It goes down to the labor, depending on just who needs it, right? So we don't limit them or ourselves on who needs the information. So,
I mean, not the tattletale on someone in one of our projects. We had, typically there's a steel fabricator, and then they subcontract again within their subcontract to an actual steel erector.
Yeah. And
we had our steel fabricator not necessarily talking to our steel erector or giving him the drawings he needed. So we just added the erector to Procore and said, hey, here are the approved shop drawings. You can find them here. And I mean, we went from being about a week behind, and they actually caught up just because they began to have access to it, they were no longer sort of in this
bottleneck.
They weren't in this bottleneck because of access. And they were also doing night work, so there were no answers happening at 3 a.m. They needed to have what they needed to do beforehand. So it's kind of a way that technology has sort of saved the laborer, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you sort of mentioned where you think technology is going next in terms of getting down to actually, getting out of the software and actually being on site with the people that are going to be building the building. How else do you see technology changing in the next 5 to 10 years?
That's a tough question. So much of it, as we've kind of alluded to, is technology sort of moving to the background and letting the technology support you in a way where you can be the best at what you do. It's gotten more and more flexible, but with flexibility comes complication.
So here's what I think is going on. So we are getting to a place where we've got our project management tools, whether they're on the architecture or construction side, that allow us to know data in real time. The next step really has been passive management, where, all right, we won the project, and then passively something hits up and says, all right, now you have to do this, this, and this, and it just tells you what the workflow needs to be. A lot of things get dropped. So step one really for us, for our 5 to 10 years, and what I think a lot of firms are looking at is workflow, like passive workflow management, where I don't have to know the next step, right? Because learning and mentorship within any firm, especially the larger they get, is hard. And it's from a QA/QC standpoint to tell a new architect, hey, you need to do this, this, and this, and this doesn't happen a lot. We need passive project controls to teach us what to do. So that's one thing. And then it's right now, like, we're trying to figure out not modeling anything. If we don't, what do we need? What do we need to, or even drawings? We always say we don't need no stinking drawings. There's going to come a point where the model is the source of truth once our contracts allow that to be the case. And once we are all better at modeling. Mm-hmm. And I think third is automation, generative design, right? You got the Dynamo is blowing up, Grasshopper. Anybody, that's a huge skill set. If you don't have it, learn it. That will make you that's not a commoditized skill set right now. And people are looking for it everywhere. So generative design is the next big one, are the big one right now. And then the robots doing labor. And like, forget about being a bricklayer and so I just remember the startup that, it lays its own brick. I think they were just a roll of concrete. It's a machine that just sits on a scaffold that goes up, and it takes the data from the Revit model and just lays brick down, and it's 6 times faster. So the skill set for labor will change, where we are now managing the robot like we do within car manufacturing. And that is what's changing, and that's going to change. And the quality of the install is way better. They're not, it's like paint holidays. Your painter comes in and you have to go and do a punch list and half a room is not painted. That's going to stop due to automation. And then right now, IoT devices tracking like what we're doing. Imagine you're throwing sensors into a building before it ever gets renovated, or we're thinking about best use cases for a building. If I ask someone at Clemson, how is this building used? Everybody will have a different opinion of what rooms are used most. But if you have sensors in every room as part of your programming and feasibility study and analysis that tracks people, humidity, heat, you're going to know what's actually going on. You still want the human element to say what's valuable, but you want big data as well. So that's the next 5 years. 10 years, man, who knows?
Okay, great. And then the last question is, and you did touch on this earlier, but is BIM a requirement of integrated project delivery?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. That one's easy. And I think it touches on all the things James has been talking about. It's the quality of the model, which directly translates to the quality of information that everyone's receiving. so many years of maybe lazy or people who don't know how to model properly. It seems like it wouldn't hurt a project as much, but it really does. I'll give an example, sort of telling myself. Someone didn't model a critical dimension piece of the skylight opening. So when James's group came out, laser scanned to verify the steel that they put in, the most important piece, we had nothing to compare to because there was nothing in the model. So it's absolutely a requirement, and it has to be done correctly.
Great. Do y'all have anything else to add?
No, it was great.
Yeah, no.
Thank y'all so much. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. So I'm going to stop my recording now.